Okay, so this is part 4 of embracing and integrating my shadow. So um, I didn't enjoy having to give up being a Hare Krishna. I really did not. But at the same time, I wanted to fit in. Um, and yeah, after that, it was just basically downhill, to be very honest. Because I just like I didn't fit in, and I never could fit in, and nothing was good enough, and nothing was proper, and I was always at ease, just at a lack of ease, at a lack of personal congruency, integration, constantly trying to figure things out, right? Eventually, I went back to being a Christian, but now this being a Christian was in the context of going back and forth. It was very interesting. Like I'd go back into Christianity, and then something would be like, "Nah, girl, this ain't it," you know. But there was always this thing about Christ Himself that I was like, "But He's true." But it was all the other stuff about Christianity, which was just guck. Going to church, interacting with superficial people, not being allowed to talk deep things about the Bible and the Christ and myself, you know, not being allowed to make my personal experience the driving force behind my religious experience. You know what I mean? It's like you always have to hear from someone else. You know what I'm saying? So I was just not interested. But anyway, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I've spoken about the fact that at some point I ended up in rehab for alcoholism. This alcoholism is a culmination of trying to cope with the disjointed nature of myself, the external front of house and the back of house, that conflict, the pain of not being accepted for who I am, while knowing that I am valuable to myself back of house, but knowing that front of house, no one will accept what's going on in the back of house. You know what I'm saying? So feeling exceedingly drained and exhausted and confused and depressed by having to be this front of house person, which was nothing like the depth of the back of house person that I am, right? And the anger as well, the anger, the rage of constantly feeling like I'm not good enough, not acceptable as I truly am. Okay, so anyway, then rehab, I went to Bible studies there, and this is when I encountered Jesus. Like, I think in the sense that I understand him now, okay? The Christ, right? And we were doing Bible studies, and I remember the date because it was like a very pivotal time. It was the 27th of December, 2019. We were doing a Bible study. And I look up from what we were reading and I'm like, are you trying to tell me that I can have a personal relationship with Jesus that has nothing to do with my family or my society or the color of my skin or anything that has to do with my ego expression of my incarnation? Just as a spiritual being, I can have a relationship with the Christ that has nothing to do with anyone, not even has anything to do with the rest of the Bible, just him. And they were like, yes, like, okay, type of like, yeah, that's what we're telling you. And they're looking at me like, where have you been your whole life, you know? And I was just like, oh my God, you know? So I got a Bible from them and I just devoured this thing. And then they had a prayer book and they said, write down your prayers if you want prayers. You know, it was a man and his wife, Daniel, and his wife, Helen, Pastor Daniel and his wife, Helen. And so I wrote down, I think I wrote down something like, please give me a sign that this is the way for me to go, right? Like, isn't following Christ. And then 2 days later, it was my birthday, the 29th of December, and it was a Sunday. So we were going to church. We were at the South Coast Recovery Center and we were going to South City Church. Okay. So they have an altar call. You know, an altar call is like when you go up and they pray for you and you accept Christ as your Lord and Savior, whatever. So I go up for so now I had told myself I will go up for the altar call because, you know, but I still was waiting for the sign. And they never do this. They never do this. They started the service with the altar call. And I was like, this is extraordinary. And then I said, okay, I'm gonna wait for someone else to go up because I wanted to go up, and I was like, I'm not gonna go up first. Someone else has to go up. So then another lady from the rehab, she got up, and then I followed her. And then I met this wonderful lady called Nora, beautiful old lady, like so sweet, so sweet. And the lady who really got me also into understanding the love of Christ, Pastor Marion. She was the pastor doing Bible studies, the other pastor. So it was Pastor Daniel and his wife Helen, and then it was also Pastor Marion. She was doing the more frequent ones, and Pastor Daniel and Helen would do just on Friday. So I go up and Nora prays for me, and she's like, I'll be your spiritual mentor if you want, whatever, whatever. And I was like, yes. And she was so sweet. She was so sweet and kind, you know. So I developed a relationship with her. And then I also remember meeting Pastor Marion, old lady, very sweet. And I remember when I first met her, she had an aura that felt like pink light with gold sparkles in it. Like, if you can imagine candy floss as a cloud of love, that's what her vibe was. Sweet and holy and kind, you know. So I remember with Pastor Marion, now I can't remember if this was before or after I had that epiphany with Pastor Daniel and Helen. But anyway, we were reading Matthew, and Matthew 11:28 to 30. This is where Christ says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So now imagine someone who's just like come out of hell, okay, is in rehab because I could not cope with life. And then you hear these words. And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, I thought I knew the Bible. But now I know I never learned it. I'd never been introduced to Christ. And all those, I'm like 38, 39 at this time. I've never been introduced to him properly. I've been introduced to religion and to the church, but I've never been introduced to the Christ himself, right? So that was like, you know, so that's where, when I talk about Jesus now in my podcast, I talk about the Christ, Yeshua, it's that experience of him. And it's that experience of him which has nothing to do with going to church, because I tried to do the whole church thing again after I came out of rehab. But irrespective of having this relationship and this experience of the Christ, I still had not dealt with the need to fit in. Okay. And this need to fit in, it will morph itself in order to fit your experience, you know, because it seems to be, it's almost like a narcissistic implant in your mind, right? Which, like any narcissist, you know, like, this is my experience, right? As you get wiser and deeper in your self-knowledge and self-love, every encounter with narcissists will become more subtle and nuanced. Okay. And my last encounter with a narcissist, this dude was super covert. I call this guy the gentleman narcissist. Like, I did not know that he was a narcissist until late. I'm talking now, like maybe November, where I realized, like, damn, this guy. Because I had a relationship with a COVID narcissist earlier on in the year, and he turned out to be a complete bad news, you know. But he was covert, and I didn't know, because I was still up until now trying to fit in and be loved based on being acceptable and palatable, and, you know, my front of house being soothing to people and stuff, you know. So I've lost my train of thought, but I'm going to carry on in the next part. This is getting a bit long. But yeah, like I say, you know, I met the Christ, but still I was not immune from wanting to fit in.